Welcome everyone, my name is Tim Burris and today I want to talk about DataGrip versus SQL Server Management Studio and what it was like for me completely abandoning SQL Server Management Studio. Well, almost completely. I've been using SQL Server Management Studio since its inception. If you watch my other videos regarding DataGrip and SQL Server Management Studio, you'll know how much it pains me that this product has not moved forward. So in the last year, I've made the switch from SQL Server Management Studio to DataGrip, and overall it's been great. But in this video, I want to talk about some of the things that were a challenge and some of the things that were great when I was making the transition to DataGrip. The very first thing that I encountered when I installed DataGrip was an issue with the connection. So here I already have DataGrip open, and one of the great things about DataGrip is it remembers your connections, it stores them. So with SQL Server Management Studio, when you start it, it asks you what you want to connect to, and it has a little history drop down that shows you things you've connected to. But with DataGrip, it actually stores your connection information here. So when you open DataGrip, you get this, which are the 3 connections I have stored in my DataGrip. But when I first ran DataGrip and I tried to create a connection under the plus sign, add a data source, choose Microsoft SQL Server, I put in my host, which was localhost. I chose my Windows credentials, and I thought this would just work. So I pressed OK, and it wouldn't connect. And I fought, and I tried options, and I clicked through this stuff, and I just could not figure out why DataGrip would not connect to SQL Server. Well, it turns out that for some reason, and maybe this is because they use JDBC, since this is written in Java, but DataGrip will not connect to SQL Server using shared memory connection. So the first thing you have to do, if you haven't already done so, is you have to either enable named pipes or enable TCP/IP in order for DataGrip to connect. Now, for many of you, maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe you already had TCP/IP or named pipes enabled. But for me, doing all of my work local, I just install SQL Server, and I don't need to enable TCP. I don't connect to it from other machines. And it frustrated me that everything on my computer, my all of my .NET apps, my Management Studio, SQL Azure Studio, every application that I have connects to SQL Server just fine using the shared memory connection, but DataGrip does not, and that was quite frustrating for me. I guess it wasn't frustrating that I had to come and check this box. It was frustrating because no documentation I saw, I didn't find any resources that suggested that you would not be able to connect to SQL Server with DataGrip using the shared memory connection. But once I got that figured out and moved on, I was able to create my connection. Everything was beautiful. And the first kind of mistake that I made on this dialog is I entered my local host. I did not have an instance, chose my authentication, and because there's a database here, I'm thinking, oh, I need to create a connection for each database. So I put my database name in, and I pressed OK, and beautiful. I had a connection to that database. And then that led me to believe I would need to do this for every database. But you don't. You don't need to put a database here at all. You can simply just connect to the server like this. So you can just leave this blank, and then you can press OK, and it'll connect to the server. And then I went down this path where I thought I had to create all these connections to the individual databases, and it was tedious and a pain. And I, after the shared memory issue, I was close to abandoning this whole idea that DataGrip might work for me. But eventually I found that from your connection, you could go and turn on individual databases. So you just go down to properties, and you can actually choose which databases you would like to have available. So I'll go ahead and turn on a couple of extra databases. And now I have them here. But then, I guess later on, I learned that it could be done even more simply than that through clicking on this little button here, which doesn't actually make itself look like a button, but you get the hand, so I probably should have realized that. But you can actually just come here and turn on which databases you want to see and which ones you don't. We click this, and then we get our full database list. We can toggle them on and off, and we can also choose which schemas we want to see underneath those. So for this database, I will say that I want DBO, I want the company schema, the email schema, and opportunity, script scripter, waste stream. Okay, so we'll just turn on all those schemas, and now we get that database, we get those schemas, and they all show up here. Similarly, how we turn on and off our databases here is how we would turn on and off schemas. So if I decided that I no longer wanted the script scripter schema, then I could just turn it off and hide it like that. So once I found that I could actually click this and turn databases and schemas on and off, things really turned around in terms of how I was viewing this product. This works really great for me because I do have a lot of databases, because I do a lot of projects, but they're not all active at the same time. And I don't really like to just go and remove the database from SQL Server and then re-add it when I need it. So when I'm working on a handful of projects, I might only need to turn on maybe 2 or 3 databases at a time. But then when I get a call and someone wants to add a new feature and I need to jump back into another database, I can just turn it on. But it helps me keep my database list here much more slimmed down than in traditional SQL Server Management Studio, where you either have all the databases or you go and remove them if you don't want to see them. Now, the next thing that I've run into with DataGrip that I'm still trying to get used to is first of all, this menu. It's so oversaturated. There are so many things, and this probably comes from the fact that I'm familiar with SQL Server Management Studio and what their menus are and where I expect to find things and how easy it is to create a new query window, to generate scripts. It's just all different here, and different doesn't mean bad, but it takes, for someone like me who's used Management Studio for so long, it has taken quite a bit of time to get used to the options here, but I'm getting there. But one thing that's still somewhat of a mystery to me is DDL. So normally, if I wanted to just view the script for this table, I would expect to go to SQL scripts and see something like generate alter script to query window, but instead they have this concept of DDL. And from this screen, you can copy it to clipboard, but there's also another go-to DDL here. And when you click that, you will get, so I've clicked it for a database, so I get the script for creating the actual database, but let's do it for an actual table. So let's expand this, and let's take this table, and let's go to DDL on this. And so we will see the definition for this table, but there's something I don't completely understand with DDL. I thought that this just generated a window with the code for it, but it doesn't. It does something that I'm not sure of. If you make a change to this, let's say that you were going to copy this as a clipboard, but you were going to change this name. You were making a copy of this table. You wanted to create a new one called Contact Advanced, because that's a dumb name and a dumb thing to do, but we're going to do it anyway. So you make changes because you want to copy this, and you make a copy of this and you put it in your source code control, or script scripter, or whatever you're using to maintain your migration scripts for your database. So you do that, you make that change, you close this window, and you think, okay, great, I've copied to my clipboard. On my clipboard, I have that, and I go on about my day, and I think everything's great, but you've done something. I don't know what you've done. When you come back to the DDL, your changes are there. Now, the actual database has not changed. I mean, the table has not changed, but this DDL is there, and it'll stay there until you correct it, which seems crazy to me because I didn't know why sometimes I was going to some of these DDLs and they were wrong, and I couldn't understand why is that not the script. So I don't understand this DDL. and it can be frustrating, but what I do know is that you do not want to change it. Do not make changes to this DDL, because the next time you come and view it, that change is still going to be there, and it's definitely going to probably throw you for a loop. Another thing to note about these connections over here, and maybe this is related to the DDL, but these things are cached. So I have two Azure connections here, and when I open DataGrip, I can actually browse through here, but it doesn't actually, it's stored the schema in some type of cache, so it hasn't actually connected to this Azure database. I mean, this Azure instance, and so it's showing you all of this from cache, and so that can be good. You know, if you have resources that are internet based, and you know, you don't want the performance impact of it going out and looking up those definitions every time you try to browse the table. That's pretty nice. And then, of course, as soon as you try to get some data from it, it's going to connect and you know, and actually run your query against the database. So there's some kind of caching that goes on behind the scenes. I have had a few times where it was not up to date. So I had applied changes to my database through scripter, you know, an outside schema migration tool, and I came in here and these weren't up to date. And you know, usually you would just you know, you can highlight the tables and say refresh, and it'll reload it, and that always works. I mean, I say always, it doesn't happen a lot, but when it happens, I typically just hit refresh and it works. So it's not a big of a deal. Though on two different occasions, I was unable to get this to refresh. No matter what I did, the column, in one case, the columns that I had added would not show up here. I refreshed at all levels of this, and the columns would not show up. In another instance, it was an entire table, a new table, or actually a set of tables that I had added were not showing up, and I would refresh, close, never would show up. In both of those cases, once where the columns were not showing and once where the tables were not showing, I simply had to kill this connection. So I had to do remove, not disconnect. Disconnect, well, since I'm connected, you know, we'll just break the connection. But I actually had to remove this data source and then re-add it, which isn't a big deal because it's local. You know, you just remove it, you add, you come in and you check which databases you want turned back on. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But what was frustrating was that if I had not noticed, I mean, I would be making decisions off of tables that didn't exist, or you know, columns that had been removed or added. So that was frustrating. It's only happened those two times. So I want to say it's something I did, but realistically, there's nothing that I should have been able to do to make that happen that way. But it is something you have to watch out for. But moving on from that, the next concept, I guess, that it took me a little while to get used to were consoles. So in Management Studio, I would right-click and I would say New Script, New Query Window. Here you would go with Jump to Query Console or New Query Console. So this is, I thought of it as a new query window, but it seems to be a little bit different than that. So if I say new query console, then I just get a new query window. Great. And you can see it up here called console_1. But actually, it's more than that. In my previous video, I talked about when you have these consoles and you have some script in here, when you close DataGrip and you reopen it, these guys stay. You know, they're back. So if this was select 2, the other one is select 1. When I close DataGrip and reopen it, both of these guys will be back. But it's more than just on close of DataGrip. These seem to be files, actual files. What I want to illustrate is I have console 1 and I have select 1 in it. And so I can close console 1, and coming from my SSMS kind of mentality, I would assume that that's gone. But it's actually not gone. I can, when I come in here and I hit Jump to Query Console, I can actually see a list of all the consoles that I've ever had open and when I open one, it'll have the SQL that I had in there, which is actually pretty great. I just created this connection here as part of this demo, but I'm going to switch over to like the real one, the one that I had before started this demo, and show what that looks like. So I go to this database, I say jump to query console, and I say all, and I will see all the query consoles that I've ever opened. I don't know if that's good or bad. One interesting thing is I can just click on one, and whatever SQL I had in there is going to be there, which is crazy. I'm not sure. I guess there is a good reason for that. But this idea of consoles, just know that they are a little more than a simple query window that we would have had in SQL Server Management Studio. Now you can also go to this Files tab over here, and you can see all of those same consoles that I was just talking about, and see here are the ones for my Azure connection. So again, I open it, and I will just see whatever SQL I happen to have in there whenever I was using that console. So they're all here. You can right click and delete them so that they'll be gone. But this it seems crazy that I have all these consoles just chilling. So when you have a console, just know that it's going to stick around, which I guess is good. If you closed it and you want to get it back, you can go and find it. You can probably name them, but consoles are not just a SQL window, just a query window. They're a little bit more. I feel like I went over some negatives, mostly negatives in this video, but I guess really the point was these were the challenges I faced in moving to DataGrip. I don't regret switching to DataGrip. I feel like I am far more productive with DataGrip than I ever was with SQL Server Management Studio. The T-SQL window, which I did a whole video on, is far superior to that of the query editor in Management Studio, and there's some other really great things like the create table dialog, which I also did a video on, and even just being able to turn on and off these databases, all make the pains of migrating to DataGrip so much easier to bear. I'm very happy that I switched to DataGrip. I don't plan on switching back to SQL Server Management Studio. However, you can't uninstall SQL Server Management Studio. You will never get it out of your life. It is going to be stuck on you like some kind of plague. Because DataGrip is awesome, but what it cannot do is SQL Server Agent or backup databases. Now, before we say it can't back up databases, there's no user interface for performing backups. You can absolutely still write your SQL. If you're a T-SQL backup person, if you like to write your backup T-SQL, absolutely, it's just SQL. You can write it, you can run it, it happens. But if you were expecting to come in to one of these 7 billion menus and find backup database or restore database, unfortunately you will not. I did see on the DataGrip marketplace that someone created a plugin, but it, I don't know. I didn't download it. I haven't tried it, so maybe I should give that a try. I typically just use T-SQL to do my backup and restore, but I did kind of miss the fact that I couldn't come to this menu and do it. So you'll need, if you want to do basically administrative tasks like that, you're going to need Management Studio, because the other big one is SQL Server Agent. There is no support for SQL Server Agent in DataGrip at all. So if you are scheduling jobs, maintenance tasks, all that kind of stuff, even the built-in mail server for SQL Server, none of that is available through DataGrip. You will have to switch over to SQL Server Management Studio. And the reason that I know DataGrip is so much better for me than Management Studio is because every time I switch to SQL Server Management Studio to do one of those administrative tasks, and then I start trying to use it to do a query, I immediately hate myself. So it's very painful when I go and use Management Studio to do something other than managing SQL Server Agent. I definitely feel the pain. Other things I forgot to mention when I was going through here is there is great search built right in. So I know if I have any databases that have a ton. This one's got 65. Oh, this is a super old database. So yeah. Um, if we, let's see some of these procedures we have here. Yeah, old school, back when data sets were all the rage and you had store procedures for every CRUD. So I have all these generate, delete, find. So let's say that this is what you're doing on the daily, and you need to find one of those store procedures, and you know it's the generate. So you can just start typing. Just start typing generate, and it will filter down. So I don't remember what that procedure was called. So let's do generate. I think it was actually generator. It was generator. So there's find and delete. So find or save. And so if you have a bunch of store procedures or a bunch of tables, I could definitely see you finding a bunch of value in this kind of quick search feature. So to kind of summarize my experience transitioning from SQL Server Management Studio to DataGrip, one, you can't use shared memory connection. Make sure you enable named pipes or TCP IP. Two, when you create a connection, you don't have to target a specific database, just target the server, and you can quickly and easily turn databases and schemas on and off right here through this little UI, which makes it pretty awesome. Lets you kind of remove the clutter of databases that you want to keep around, but you might not be using on the daily. Next, the fact that it keeps all your connections. When you close DataGrip and reopen it, you will have all these connections. You don't have to just make a choice from a drop down. Next up, DDL. There's something crazy with DDL. Don't change it. Whatever you do, do not change it. Also, there's some kind of bug with refreshing when the schema changes outside of DataGrip. Sometimes the refresh button may not work, and you might actually have to remove the connection and put it back. Though that's not a big deal. Only happened twice. Know that consoles exist. Know that they are not just a normal query window that goes away when you close it. That it will maintain them, and for you can get back to them if you need to, or you'll end up like me with a huge long list where I should probably just go through and kill them all. Wonder if I can just like highlight and delete. I can highlight and delete. So yeah, not so bad. I mean, I could go through and clean these up, over time. So you might just have to figure out what your policy for consoles are. Maybe you always use default console and you never use this. And finally, administrative tasks. SQL agent, database mail, SQL Server backups. You're going to have to do those through SQL Server Management Studio. But all in all, I am super happy that I've switched to DataGrip. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.